Thanks for calling Radar Radio. You're live.
Mike.
Mike, haha. Ladies and gentlemen, it is showtime.
Mike.
Mr. Gary Taylor.
Mike, let me just put a political question on the table.
Yes, sir.
How can you always tell when a politician is short?
Wow.
In stature, in height.
Oh, my God, you got me. I don't know. Wait a minute. Okay, I've got some other. Wait a minute. What'd you say, Casey?
Maybe how big his voice is.
How big his voice is? That's from Casey.
No, that's not a bad idea. But sometimes you can have. I mean, Prince had a real baritone voice at points in time when he spoke. So he wasn't really that tall. But with politicians, there's no listing on the internet. I'm trying to find out how tall Karl Rove was, how tall Jeff Sessions was. When you're tall, they'll list your height. But when you're a little short guy with a big mouth and you're a politician, they don't put your height up because they know they're gonna come back and get you on this.
Oh, that's messed up.
That is messed up. We have it on tape.
I waste my time during the day. It's like, how tall is Jeff Sessions? I mean, forget the fact that he looks like Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies.
Oh,
you know,
my gosh.
He does.
Could write comedy.
Put his face next to Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies, and they'll look exactly the same. But
that's a shame.
So out of all this time, you've got. Not only are you a great songwriter, and just I worship your music, but you got a sense of humor, comedy. What?
Man, it's just
get out of here.
It's taking life. It's taking life and looking at it for what it really is. We just take a lot of things out of context, and I think when you get caught up in taking things out of context, you tend to lose how funny life can really be. The humor, the sensitivity.
Absolutely, my brother.
Yeah. So how have you been, man?
I've been great, man. First of all, we are honored to have you on the show tonight. Really honored to have you on the show. I spent a lot of time in Los Angeles. I moved from Atlanta to Los Angeles in '89 and came back right before the Olympics. In about 3 years of that time, 3 years, and I cannot kid you not, I was pretty much obsessed. I ran my roommates crazy with Gary Taylor music.
Oh man, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Guys like you that put my kids through college.
I must say I didn't do it fully on my own, but I helped out.
I feel you.
It was great music. It was music about love, being in love, out of love, searching for love. It was just beautiful, sophisticated music, and I was trying to just find my way in L.A., and your music was the soundtrack of 3 of the years that I lived there. I listened to Gary Taylor.
Now, what year, when were you here?
I was there from 1990. I moved, we were packing up and getting ready to go in '89, so I moved in 1990, and I was there until 1995.
That was actually right about when we were starting.
You were cranking.
Morning Crew Records.
Yeah.
I just decided to walk away from.
Was it Virgin or A&M?
At 90, it was. I had just walked away from Virgin.
Okay.
But it was walking away from the music industry as a means of how I get to do what I get to do. I mean, I have to be honest with you. I did not start off as with any desire to be a recording artist. None. I still have, certain trepidation about singing in front of people. It's kind of like I'm still fascinated by, being an artist. And my thing was initially I'm just going to be a songwriter. I have a cousin who's a writer. I'm going to write some great songs. Try to do what Skip Scarborough did. But what happened was my music was deemed lame because it was romantic music. It was music with stories or substance, and the record companies at that time were just looking for whatever the quick fix was with dance music and top of the charts kind of stuff. And I wasn't writing that kind of stuff. They didn't really see you as an artist. They saw you as a record. You know, if you're a hit, which actually is why the industry is where it is today, where you can have a hit record this week and nobody knows who you are next week.
That's
so
right.
it's a different. It's definitely a different approach to how I came into the industry, but I have no regrets, man, for where I ended up.
That is great, man. I call you, and I'm sure you've heard this, the Prince of Quiet Storm.
Yeah, Steve Ivory coined that phrase. He called me that one year. I think it was in the beginning of the Take Control album. He said, "Man, you're going to mess around and be the crown prince of the Quiet Storm," because I was getting basically no real love from, you know, radio. I had even written a letter to black radio saying, like, what do I have to do to get exposure at that level? But the Quiet Storm shows, which ran at night, they would run wild with my stuff. So I just calmed down and just accepted the fact that, you know what, you're in a genre of music that people love for a reason, and they plug into where they can find the love, and that's usually, you know, the late night hours or whatever. And I was totally cool with that. Totally cool, because I'm not hinged on, you know, you can't tie my name technically to any dance. When I think of the Running Man, I can say, well, you know, Bobby Brown on his first, Every Little Step I Take, he was doing the Running Man or whatever, and that's, you know, that was the dance of that time. But then you would ask yourself, okay, what ballads does Bobby Brown have? You know, where are his standalone songs that still stand today with the strength that, you know, in the time period when he recorded, such as the stuff that James Ingram or Luther Vandross were doing. You know, their stuff just stood the test of time. So that's kind of like, you know, I got locked into that, and I'm comfortable. I was totally cool with it. And then confidence takes over. You know, once you start doing it and people start liking your voice, and it was actually Vesta Williams who got me to like my singing voice. I used to do demos and radio jingles and stuff like that out here in L.A., and I was in the studio with her once, and I just like, oh my God, I just can't stand my voice sometimes when I listen to it. And it's just being your own worst critic, I think. And then she just froze me in a studio session one time and told me how much she loved my voice, and that if you don't find that thing in you that allows you to love your voice the way I love it, you'll never have fans loving it. And I was like, wow, I had to give it some serious thought. So I actually started searching for what my singing capabilities were about, you know. And that once those things started kicking in, and it's like, okay, I can get in front of a mic now and do my thing and know what it is. You know, I know that I'm not, you know, Donny Hathaway or Stevie Wonder, or sometimes with Najee I'll sing what's going on, but I have to tell him, drop it a couple, you know, keys, and, you know, I'll do it in D flat, but I'm not Marvin Gaye. That song is a wheel that doesn't need to be reinvented.
Right.
You know? So.
Well, I've worked with Vesta. When I lived out there, I moved from Atlanta to sing. I met Do you know Raymond Jones? Did you know Raymond?
Yeah, Raymond actually, we did a show together at a place called Catalina's Jazz Club out here.
Oh, yeah.
Years. It had to have been a couple, 3 years before he passed away.
Yeah. Well, he was just a best friend of mine when I moved out there. He took me under his wings, and I wrote with him and sang with him, and met quite a few people. And I worked with Vesta. Vesta didn't work with him, but I met Vesta when I worked in Atlanta. I was singing in Atlanta. And her drummer was her MD.
Okay.
And when I can't think of his name now, it escapes me. But when I moved out to Los Angeles, I had his number, and I looked him up, and he got me on with Vesta, and I worked with her for a short time. Then went on to work with Raymond. But I said that to say thank God for Vesta, and I miss her music. Would love to see where she would be today, but I think that was some incredible advice. Because it came true from a true singer. I mean,
Well, I heard it in recent times from Rochelle Farrell. She was saying that I hear that version of Woman of Color with you and Will you and Will Downing and Scotty Scott. She says, I hear that and I understand why that's on radio. She said, but when I listen to your Eclectic Bohemian album,
wow.
It's your version of Woman of Color that I listen to.
Yeah.
And it's funny that she says that because Scotty said the same thing when I asked him to sing on it. He looked at me and said, what do you want me to do? You know, and I'm like,
right.
I need your voice, man. So it needs to come from more than just, for me, it felt like it needed to come from more than just one man, you know, saying.
Right, I get it.
So, yeah.
I get it. Did you guys ever do a video for that?
No.
That would have been beautiful.
I was kind of like out of the video phase, I think, because of losing Video LP and Video Soul and all the real quality shows we had when I was coming through the turnstile. By the time I got to Eclectic Bohemian, I think that was 2004, videos for my demographics were just kind of like over. You know, it's like they just didn't do videos. They don't do videos today for us. I mean, there are people that do them, but the only place you'll see them is pretty much on YouTube, because there is no soul of VH1, there is no real, you know, Video Soul, Video LP, and whatever. And I sit around my house sometimes being delusional, thinking someday they're going to open up and bring those kinds of quality shows back. But that kind of music may be set in that era for a reason. It's like why we have to go back to Mozart, Gustav Mahler, Bach, Brahms, Beethoven. We have to go back to a certain clique of guys that wrote classical music. When you think of classical music, you don't think of anybody contemporary. I don't care who they are. They're just even the classical vocalists like Luciano Pavarotti. He sang music from a certain era that isn't written in this time frame, and I think that's applicable to the music that, you know, where I come from. I think for me the best R&B music this country will ever know came through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and I try to carry it into the 2000s, but I feel sometimes like I'm the lone stranger because I'm not putting a rapper on my records, and I'm not sampling anything. I just refuse to do it.
Good.
Yeah.
Real good. In 2015, you performed with Najee in London for Under the Bridge, and now in 2017, you're returning from Madrid, Spain, performing again with the incredible Najee. Tell us a little bit about the experience and performance in Madrid.
Well, the Madrid thing came about, I believe, as a result of Najee and I going to London. We just looked at each other. He said, I haven't been to London in over 20 years. And I said, I've never been there, despite the fact that my first hits came out of London. I had never been there. The record company that I was assigned to, or actually had done a distribution deal with Expansion, they just didn't. They were selling records. We're selling records, and you don't have to be here because we're selling records. My mentality was, if I come there and perform, I'll sell a lot more for your company. They didn't, so we ultimately parted ways. Well, many years later, Najee and I both said, why don't we just take ourselves over to London and do a show? So he had friends over there that he was recording with, and we hooked in. We paid for our own flights, and we hooked up with a promoter who got us hotels and did what we had to do to build a show. And we went to this place called Under the Bridge, which is owned by the club itself is actually where the Chelsea soccer team plays soccer. Okay. There's a complex there where this guy built this unbelievable club under the soccer stadium, and that's where we ended up performing, and it was sold out. Wow. And crazy. The only thing I would say about that particular performance was that we could have technically been on stage for 2 or 3 hours. We weren't, but we could have been. And I think that performance spawned the interest in Spain. A promoter actually asked Najee to come to Spain and for their first hot jazz festival, smooth jazz festival that they were going to have over a period of 4 days. And initially when they asked me to go, I just said, nah, I don't want to do it because, nobody knows me in Spain, so I'm not really going to go over there and sing and not even have people feel or relate to what I'm doing. So I kind of figured they were into jazz. Well, they came back to me and said, look, none of this music is happening over here yet. You're the prototype of what we're bringing over. And after I had conversations with the promoter when I got there, he made it very clear that he understood I saw myself as an adult contemporary urban artist more so than a smooth jazz artist. And he said, I understand that you bring music to people vocally, which is a very important thing when you have concerts like this. You can't just inundate people with guitar solos, sax solos, and piano solos. People want to feel what people feel, verbally, and that's what you're going to be bringing. So I just said, cool, we'll go do it. We went over there, and I'm telling you, Mike, it was like I was dropped into heaven for 4 days. It was like I couldn't believe it. I flew out on a Thursday night, got there on a Friday. We performed on Saturday, and I came home on a Sunday. And in that 4 days, I improved my ability to speak Spanish a lot better than trying to sit up in front of the computer and study, Rosetta Stone.
Right.
I can't believe how warm, friendly, and just beautiful the people are. We were in an incredible hotel, and it was in the heart of the city, and there was just a warmth that was going on. Mm-hmm. We performed at a theater that was walking distance from the actual hotel, so we walked up to the theater and, kind of like took in the nightlife and whatever as we were going to perform. It's kind of bizarre when you're going somewhere and you see people lined up to get in a place to see a performance, and you're the performer. So, wow. I'm not just coming here to perform. I'm in Madrid, Spain, performing as this guy named Gary Taylor, who people know a little bit about his music.
Wow,
we got up on
amazing.
Stage and we burned it up, man. We burned it up, and it was like I did Eye to Eye as one of my songs in the middle of Najee's set, and I just said, I saw one guy was really like into it. He was up and getting into it, and I said, so I kind of like went into my be me mode, and it's like I come all the way from L.A., and this is the only guy that's going to party with me, so I kind of pulled him out, pointed him out to the crowd or whatever, and maybe about 30 seconds later, the entire venue was standing and partying and singing eye to eye along with me. It was like one of the things I'll say is everybody in the house says, eye to eye, face to face, and people went crazy and loved it. I mean, so much so that Najee told me after we had performed, he said, man, we should have closed with that because you just had the people going crazy. And I was like, you know what? We did what we were supposed to do. We introduced our music to Spain, and the promoter made it very clear, you're definitely going to have to bring you back,
That's awesome. Do you see a difference in the way fans react overseas versus here in the States with your music?
They are more astute. They are more in tune with the process of how you got to where you got to, all the way down to who the engineer is. They want to know who the musicians are. They want to know. I mean, they're very musical. They're not just, they're here in the States. You have music heads that'll do that. There's a store that used to be in Los Angeles. They just closed it, Amoeba, and you would always know where to find the music heads. You can go over to Amoeba, and they can tell you what year a record was recorded, who played on it, what studio they recorded it in, who the engineer was, what was the first, second, third single or whatever. Well, that's the way it is all over Europe, and especially so in the UK. I thought maybe it would be a little different in Spain because I'm thinking, nobody really is the Spanish audience. They don't really know what kind of music we do. They have their own folklore, their country style music or whatever. But then I'm standing in line signing CDs, and a guy walks up with 8 CDs of mine that he had bought over the years, and I'm like, oh my God,
that would have been me. Yeah,
I couldn't. I couldn't believe it. Had them lined up, told me when he bought them, where he bought them, what his favorite songs were, and whatever. And I was just tickled to sign him and thank him for keeping me musically alive. You know, it's really a blessing.
Wow. How did you come up? Before I even ask this question, when I think of great music and just sound, you think of Luther Vandross. You think of Donny Hathaway. You think of Patti LaBelle, Anita Baker. And then there's Gary Taylor, to me. How did you come up with the Gary Taylor sound? It is distinct. It has never been matched or duplicated, ever. And I've been listening to music for a long time. I'm not a young one. So how did you come up with that unique sound that is Gary Taylor?
I think once you discover what your roots are, my roots are definitely Stevie Wonder, the Beatles, Joni Mitchell, great songwriters have always gotten my attention. And then great singers have always gotten my attention. Donny Hathaway just being, Charlie Wilson, cats that I just, these are tenors, and you go like, man, if I was ever going to sing, I would want to sing like that. But I also know that you can be a great singer and not have a great song. You can have a great song and not have the right chord progression. So there are artists like Dexter Wansel out of Philadelphia who is just a chord merchant. He's the guy that's on the corner with nothing but beautiful chord changes and chords that pull you into the music sonically. When he's doing You Are All I Need with Gene Carn, and he brings strings in through his synthesizers, you can feel the wind sweeping across the ocean as he's got foghorns going on in the background of that song. And stuff like that has always gotten my attention because it's musical visions, it's visual, pictorial things of music that you're hearing. You're able to put them in the context of what they're like, visually. So I kind of drafted a lot of different styles until I figured out what my own was. And my own style is something that I hear. It was funny that you say that. Najee was telling me that I play closed chords. You play these closed chords, man, that are just uniquely yours. He said nobody does that. I've been told by Bobby Lyle, my voicings are uniquely my voicings, that nobody voices my songs the way I do. A large part of that, Mike, comes from never having studied. Just sit down with a piano and play what you hear. Well, I started off as a child playing trumpet, clarinet, flute, morphed into tuba because it was the loudest, and I've always loved bass. I came out of high school, went into the military, got in a doo-wop group, fumbled around with a bass guitar a little bit while I was in the military, came out, and then, spent a little time studying psychology, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life, and then one day just woke up and said, I'm going to do what I love doing. I'm going to do music. It took songs like You Can't Hide Love and Bobby Caldwell's What You Won't Do for Love. It's just, and even having the courage to go out there with no, I felt no fear about what rejection might or might not do to me. I'm not doing this to go out and fear rejection. I'm doing this to satisfy something that is God-given to me, and I'm going to develop it irrespective of what anybody thinks. And it took years. It took years to develop. I mean, when I listened to my early stuff, I could definitely say, I know why I got thrown out of the, Warner Brothers record company with this song, or why Mercury passed on this, or why, ABC Dunhill passed, or why Polygram or Polydor or whoever. And it's like, now I look at the situation and I think, I stayed true to what I'm doing musically because I can hear music differently than anybody else. I hear what I hear, and I don't try to make it fit any kind of contemporary or educational understanding. And I think that freedom is what gave me my sound. It'll make me play chords that don't necessarily fit what we would call a standard progression musically. I know what a progression is now, but yeah, I don't write to progressions. I write to melodies, and my melodies have to have the right words. If the words are not right, then it's not going to sound right when I sing it. You know, no matter how much sensitivity you put on a word, if the word's not the right word, it's just not. You're not going to be sensitive to it. So
right.
I stumbled into that stuff by just continuously doing, and I'm also encouraged by people who think I can't do. I mean, I love it when you tell me I can't do something, because then I'm like, okay, I'll show you.
Right, right.
You know, I'll show you. I know what I'm doing, and I know what it's supposed to do. Because you can't hear it doesn't mean what, you know, it is what you say it is. And I tell people all the time, I hear you, but I'm not going to adhere to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they kind of like look at you like, well, you know, good luck. You know, so
right.
My mentality just says, you know what, God gave you a gift. Follow your heart. It's not leading you down the bad road. It's like all the record companies that didn't hear my music in the past as I was trying to become a part of the record industry. Ironically, none of those companies exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And wow. I'm still here.
And Morning Crew's still here. I'm
still here doing Morning Crew music.
Yeah.
You can't do this. It's too hard. You'll never happen. You'll never get a record. You'll never... It's been a gap between Retro Blackness and this alleged record I'm supposed to be doing, Acoustic Therapy. I say alleged because I have 9 songs recorded, and I'm okay. I'm just not there yet. I'm just like, it'll be there when I get there. And when I get there, a good friend of mine, music journalist Steve Ivory, says, when you get there, 11, 12 years, it won't matter. When you put that record out and they know that you're still giving them the very best you can give them, it's going to be like no time has elapsed at all.
Right.
It's just going to be, we're just happy to have this, you know, so.
Right.
And it's crazy, Mike, because I live with songs that are finished right now. I have like 4 of the songs. I look at them and I go like, you know, I could put, you know, nursery rhymes on the rest of this album, and these 4 songs will sell the record. But I want to have everything on there, you know, have legs and stand on its own, in terms of lyrical content, chord progressions, and whatever. And the neat thing is this many years later, I did start taking music lessons from my music director, my East Coast music director, Vince Evans. He's in Lanham, and he and we do lessons via
Maryland, right?
Yeah, he's in Lanham.
Okay.
And it's like that. He's my guy. He's a Berklee School of Music graduate who first confronted me about a song I wrote. You know, the I'm Coming Back, that's the version that I did for Layla.
Yes.
He was playing that song for the vice president, and at a function that Layla was doing when Barack was president. He was playing it at a function for Joe Biden, and he looked at Layla and he was like, this song, it doesn't fit any format of anything songs are supposed to fit. And he looked at Layla and he said, this is brilliant. Who wrote this? You know, and she looks at him and she tells him, I don't know where you're asking me. You're his music director. And once he found out I wrote this song, he said, look, I want to teach you how to play piano, but I want to teach you what's coming out of your head and your heart more so than what you would learn in Berklee. He said, this song, I'm Coming Back, would get you kicked out of Berklee School of Music. And I was like, why? And he said, because it's so sophisticated and it follows no format that because they can't explain it, it's not supposed to exist. It just doesn't exist. And it's like telling John Coltrane you can't do those riffs, or telling Dizzy Gillespie and Bird you can't create bebop because we can't explain it. It's like, because you can't explain it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just exists in a realm that is otherworldly or godly, as I would like to see it. And that whole process of absorbing new chord progressions, new voicings of my chords, new whatever, that understanding my voice, the textures I can have in my voice. I'm not a screamer, so I can't go out there screaming through songs. I don't start my songs with 100 riffs before I get to the first lyrics. I would rather just tell simple stories with simple melodies, and that is ultimately what became this guy people know as Gary Taylor. I don't always see him the way they see him, but I do know when I'm in the studio writing. I do know when I'm connected.
That's awesome. If you notice, my phone keeps the bell keeps ringing. I probably had about 25 people to say they can't believe it's you. He's really on the phone. Wow, that's really Gary Taylor. And I want to definitely say, Jacqueline Jones, great friend of mine, wants to say hello, and she's like, I can't wait till the interview's over. I want to hear more of the music. So we've got
those
fans
people
out there.
need to know how appreciative I am, because there's this thing that allows me to get up on stage and laugh and joke and whatever, and it's like I'm having fun with music because my music family, my fan base, they have fun with the music.
Yes.
I'm able to tell a story, and people will come back to me and say, it feels like you wrote that about me, and I can look at them and say, I did write that about you because you're my kind of people. We are all the same people who get this, not that I had this click, and it's like, yeah, I'm in control of this, and I'm learning from it. There's the biggest record I have on YouTube is my least favorite song on any album I've ever done, a thing called Rest My Lips on the Mood of Midnight. It was like, maybe it's just the production of it. Maybe it's like I wasn't comfortable with how I sound as a vocalist or whatever. It might have just been the fact that I can hear it now as a Brazilian samba, and it makes sense, and it for me now it kills. But a friend of mine, Nichelle Howe, I call her Nikki, out of Atlanta, Georgia, she said, you don't know the power of the song. She said, I'm just going to create a video and put it up. And I said, go ahead, you prove your point or you'll prove my point. Well, she proved her point. It's the one song on YouTube that is taking off and dragging everything in its wake. It's like when I had 2,000 or 3,000 hits on YouTube, I was like, well, my excuse would be, well, I'm not a YouTube baby, and it's not really where I go with my music. I'm just going to do my songs, sell records, and enjoy this. But it's got my attention. This song I watched it go from 2,000 to 6,000 to now it's over 200,000 hits, and it's all been happening at some kind of breakneck speed, and it seems to be dragging every song I've ever done in its wake. Along with it, people will just spin off on that, and then, it's you look at that and look at the situations with streaming and digital and all of that. It's, I would just say, Mike, I'm blessed to be where I am. When I have fans that support me and love what I do, it's supposed to make me feel good. I feel good about it because that's what it's supposed to do. You're not really trying to do good music to get to people's hearts just so you can manipulate and play with them. You want them to know that, yeah, I feel you. I connect with you on that, And so, consequently, I get a lot of my people that love the lyrical contents of my songs. They'll come back and they'll say, I felt like you were writing that song about me. And it's like, yeah, basically, if it's a human experience, I was writing it about you. It's not every experience. I'm not writing about just Gary. There are a lot of human experiences I pick up vicariously through just being around people, relationships and love and whatever. You pick that up and you look at it and you say from your perspective, and being a student of psychology, I love looking at the psychological and the analytical aspects of how can I say something like this and bring about some kind of understanding of what a person might be looking for and a possible healing in the process musically.
Wow. That's beautiful, man. People, if you're just tuning in, we're talking with Gary Taylor. Make sure you go to Gary_Taylor Gary_music to follow him on Instagram. Again, that's Gary_Taylor_music. Want to give a shout out to Jacqueline Jones, Charlene Pace, and Joy Tiffany right now for listening in to this interview. And the phone keeps beeping. But our next question, Gary, what out of you have 9 albums that you've completed and 1 on the way. Which one of those 9 albums do you hold dearest? Whether it was something, a period in a time in your life that was you were going through something that you were writing, a favorite song, favorite album. Which one of those albums, the one album that is just special to you?
It's hard to say. It's like having a special child. I tell people musically on each album, there's probably 1 or 2 songs on each album that really speaks, volumes. I'd say the least at the bottom of that list would be Under the Nightlight, but then there's Gotta Be a Way that's on Under the Nightlight, which is to me just one of those, this is, you're at my front door type songs, and let me just politely tell you about yourself, it's one of those kind of tunes. Right. So it's like, so even with that being not the album I go to all the time, that album has a song on it that I go to, and Under the Nightlight itself is a song that I go to a lot. So it's having one particular album. I have to be honest with you, Mike, it depends on who's bringing what album to my attention.
Gotcha.
More people have bought Square One, and Square One by itself has sold more than all of my albums combined. It just keeps selling and not stopping, and I don't get it. I don't understand it. I just look up, it's like this many, and I'm thinking, had I been with a major record company that understood what I was doing with that record and pushed it, the way they pushed records in the time frame when it came out, when there were record stores or whatever, I'd be sitting easily on a multi-platinum album. But I'm sitting on an album that sold a few 100,000 copies that I own everything. So it doesn't matter about how much notoriety or money or whatever. It's an album that even in the download state, it just keeps going. And Blind to It All and Hold Me Accountable come off of that album as my favorites. They're just songs that I go back to, and I look at the videos that were done by director Pam Robinson, and the fact that, in a time when you're not supposed to happen technically, I spent my money on that Square One album. It was my first album on my label that I took a chance on. I spent all of the money I had on that to do the videos and whatever, and a good friend of mine, Montez Miller out of Detroit, she was at BET. She brought me over there and said, "You know what? We're gonna find a way, until you get videos for these songs, we're gonna find a way to get you on BET." I went on video LP and kind of like track dated them live. They played the track, I sang live.
Right.
And she said, "I'm going to use this to hold a spot for you until you get a video done." And that made me come home and fork up the money for a video.
Wow.
And we did Blind to It All. And
beautiful
in a time where they say, okay, you're going to run 6 to 8 weeks on BET, and that's a great run. If you get your video up 6 to 8 weeks, you'll sell a lot of records. Yeah. Well, Blind to It All ran on BET for 18 weeks. And then Hold Me Accountable came back and ran on BET for 16 weeks. And those 2 songs being back-to-back videos on BET, which was a powerful entity at that time, really pushed the sales of that album. And I could easily say that's the most recognizable album. But I also love Loving My People. I love My Blackness. I love Do You Know?
Retro Blackness.
The Retro Blackness album, for me, has a lot of stuff on it. There's some things, there are a couple songs on there I go like, could have put something better on there. But I'm like that about every album I do. It's like the songs, you just want to finish an album up. It's the reason I'm not doing that with Acoustic Therapy. Acoustic Therapy is either going to be right or it's not coming out. And already it's like I'm sick of myself because I'm riding around with a song that I think is a beast that basically I finished 10 years ago.
Really?
Know, it's like, oh, you wrote this song, yeah, I'm going to produce it, none, whatever. Played it for somebody, and he called and left a message on my machine, and he never calls my house. He just left a message on my machine saying, man, what the heck are you doing up in that studio? And I'm thinking, oh, this is not good. And when I called him back, he couldn't even talk. He was so blown away by the song. And I'm like, are you kidding? I said, it's not even close to finish yet, But he was like, no. If you just had this song and a bunch of Hamburger Helper on the album, the record would sell. So I'm like, okay.
Right.
My approach, Mike, is to try to give my style of music a little bit of Bill Withers edge with, like a steel string acoustic guitar and whatever. Still want to be funky, still want to have my sophisticated chord changes or whatever, and, put stuff down like that. There's a ballad that's coming out on that particular album that I started doing it with Rochelle Farrell, but she stays so busy, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish it with her. But the song has to come out. It's just too good a song for me not to do it. So it's like, okay, I can put a call into Mesa, or I saw Lettucey the other day and talked to her, and I've talked to Avery Sunshine, and Layla Hathaway is a good friend. So I can duet the song with one of my friends, I'm sure, and it'll still have its power. But
I'd love to hear you or Layla or Avery. That would be great.
Yeah, Avery was with us in
I saw that.
Spain.
I saw her on
she
the
was
bill.
with us in Spain, man, and it was a pleasure to meet her. It's a trip when you meet somebody who you love and respect, and you don't think they know you. And I just walked up to her to introduce myself, put my hand out, and she just reaches out her arms and just hugs me. And she was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm meeting you." And I'm like, "What?" I'm meeting you. So
wow.
It's just being around some wonderful people who have wonderful sense of humor and humility. A lot of the singers that I'm very good friends with, they are all just very comical. They were like a lot like Vesta, who
yes,
was just loaded. She could have been a comedy act.
Oh my God! There was sometimes in rehearsal that if there was a 3-hour rehearsal, we rehearsed half, and the other half was Vesta just going in, just being Vesta. Yeah. And I loved every moment of her, and she taught me so much, and she was so kind to me. Yeah. She was a Sag also, so we had this sort of Sagittarius end of the year bond that we would, identify with. But she was a beautiful woman inside and out.
Yeah, beautiful. And had a brilliant sense of humor, and that to me is important. It is where I've had people tell me at the Birchmere in Alexandria, Virginia, that you could have easily just been a comedian, because I have that wry sense of humor where I'll say whatever I'm thinking, and it's like not like I'm trying to be a comedian, but I see the irony in life and how we take it too serious sometimes, and maybe we should just look at it and laugh and find the humor in it.
True.
Tie all of that to your music and your personality, and then that's how you end up as an artist. But like I said, that was the last bastion. Being an artist was the last thing I thought I was going to be. I really wanted to be a songwriter. I saw my cousin Skip Scarborough write monstrous hits, and it's like talking to him. I think he and I connected on Don't Ask My Neighbor. Initially I thought, well, he's my cousin, I'm going to ride his coattails into victory, and went over his house one day, and he made it very clear, man, I'm still fighting to get into this the same way you are. You can't just come over here and hang out. It's not the clubhouse. And, I kind of got sideways with him about, how it is when you think, so now you're old Mr. Big Shot. Now,
right.
Yeah, okay, I'm not your cousin now? Okay, cool. Yeah, okay, I'll show you.
Right.
But as I started writing and getting more and more into the writing phase of it, which is what he did only. He wasn't a recording artist. He just produced and wrote great songs. I understand how busy and how time-consuming and how locked down your life is when you're in the middle of a song. You can't open the door for anybody else. There's just no room for you to breathe if there's another person in there. So, when I did Don't Ask My Neighbor, I out of, just respect to him, I said, why don't you come in and produce this with me? And he came in, and we had monsters on the record,
This is the guy that wrote Don't Ask My Freaking Neighbor. Do you get it, folks? Okay, I'm sorry. Had a moment there, Gary. I mean, hold on.
I don't care what time you are. That song is classic. It's timeless. I adore, love, worship that song.
Yes.
Well, he wrote Don't Ask My Neighbor. He wrote Love Changes, Love Holiday, Love Ballad. Now, this is the story. He called me and told me, he was like, yeah, man, we were trying to get this song down, and I wrote, for Maurice, I wrote Love Ballad and took it over to him, and it was like, and he didn't like it.
What?
And it was like, why, Skip? He said, because basically the song was finished, and there wasn't going to be any collaborative anything on this. This was just going to be Skip Scarborough, the Beast. So he took the song to LTD and did it on Jeffrey Osborne, and it was, after that, he kind of solidified he was the cat bringing the goods. Forget Can't Hide Love, forget the phone call that he called me. He had written a song called Giving You the Best That I Got for Anita Baker, and called me and said, man, you need to do something to get on this Anita album. And I'm like, man, I don't have anything for Anita. She's gone through a billion songs, and everybody talks about how she rejects your music. And he was like, man, that song you have, that demo you had with Layla, Layla Hathaway did the demo for Good Love. And Anita Baker heard the demo and said, no way in hell I'm going to let this song ever get out there without my voice on.
That was a question I wanted to ask you, was about, did you sing Good Love? Because I'm going, my next thing is now I want to hear Gary sing Good Love. Or did someone demo it like Lori Perry or
Layla? Layla Hathaway demoed an 18-year-old Layla Hathaway. And Anita Baker in the studio with Barney Perkins, the engineer, and we were at a place called Studio D at Kendon in Glendale, and she said, I need to look down this guy's throat and see what his vocal cords are doing. And I said, that's not a guy, that's Donny Hathaway's daughter. She said, what? I said, yeah, that's Layla Hathaway. That's Donny Hathaway's daughter. She's a student at Berkeley School of Music. And Anita just shook her head, and she just oh, no, baby, I can't let this get out there.
Wow.
She cut it. I'm not mad at her. But Skip's biggest song is Lovely Day with Bill Withers.
With Bill Withers, wow.
Yeah. Just nothing but hits, and that's why it's like, okay, I'm going to be a songwriter, and while people are saying, well, you haven't done an album since Retro Blackness, that was 2006, yeah, but, I worked on Sexy, Consensual, The Blessing, Flying High, I mean, 12 or 13, I co-wrote the theme song for his Will Downing's Christmas album.
Yep. Yeah,
so it's just like I'm
you and Will have been working quite a bit.
Supposed to do. I'm still a writer. I wrote and sang "Moon Over Carolina" on Najee's album, which is making its noise. So
and for the young millennials out there, "Stressed Out" and "Prodigy," "Stressed Out" by Tribe Called Quest, is also one of your songs, which is Good Love.
It's a sample of Good Love.
It's a sample of Good Love. So when you hear Faith Evans say, I know
how it feels to be stressed out.
Gary Taylor. Gary Taylor. And Prodigy sample one of your songs.
Prodigy took two words out of a song from the Compassion single and named a song called Your Love. Because they used my voice and my melody was the only melody in there. It's the same thing with Stressed Out.
That was the day when you couldn't touch anybody's stuff. You had to,
Yeah.
You would.
And then when they said Prodigy, and it's like, well, Prodigy wants to sample your voice and sample your song, and I'm like, oh, man, who are they and what do they do? Me with my lack of, I'm more interested in listening to Dori Caymmi or Antonio Carlos Jobim or Sarah Vaughan, Brazilian Love Affair. I'm listening to stuff that's like, and then when you get into this European electro-techno kind of music, and I'm like, I can't really relate to this stuff. And they said, well, their last album sold 4 million copies. And you know what? I'm starting to like it already. I'm starting to like it a lot more. They sell tons of records.
Wow.
And it's like, wow. Somebody just how did they find what I'm doing and to put it in that perspective of their own and then turn it into a hit with their style of music. And that's proof in the pudding, Mike, that it's every record out there isn't necessarily for you, but every record out there is for somebody.
For somebody, yeah.
Somebody,
absolutely.
You know.
Wow. I want to play something, Gary, one moment. Hold on one second.
Feeling lost in a haze, but what stays in focus is that smile on your face. Woman of color.
Oh, that was Will. I wanted to play a sample of that because I'm working on a project right now, and it's called Black Girl Magic, where we're celebrating the African American woman of all shades, colors, sizes, creeds, you name it. And I went to this song, Woman of Color. And I was telling Danielle the other night, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning before I could even take the headphones off my head. And I started around 11 something when I got in. And I went album after album, song after song of all of your stuff. And Woman of Color just spoke to me, and it was because of the project I'm working on right now. And so my question is where did that song come from? It's such an incredible song to celebrate our sisters, our mothers, our aunts, our daughters. Where did that song, where did you pull it? It's a beautiful, beautiful song.
It was actually women. I guess it was my way of doing an answer to was it Angie Stone that had that?
Brown, yeah,
Black Brother or Brown Brother, something like that. Angie Stone.
Absolutely.
It was my way of saying, I hear you, Angie, and I'll put it on my end. I'll put it on an end for us to do an end around so that when we're dancing for the same reason.
How beautiful.
Like, brothers of color and sisters of color, we're all saying this to each other. We all feel each other for who we really are or whatever. But it is probably that and I'm Coming Back are two of the fastest songs I've ever written. They are so real to what they are verbally. I don't have to conjure up lyrics or be clever to say how I feel about, and people can call me what they want to call me, but it's just, for me, culturally, I'm connected. I'm connected. And as much as I like to think, I come from, for years we thought, our family, we thought we were Creole or whatever, and we're not. My father's side of the family is Belizean, which is South American, and my mother's side of the family is Santo Domingo, which is the Dominican Republic. So we're all these Africans that really came up through that land that broke away from Africa. And if you look at the shape of Africa's west coast and the shape of South America's east coast, you will see how perfect a puzzle it is, that they connect. And you have to know that before they separated, there were Africans on both sides of it. So I don't necessarily subscribe to us all coming over here in coach. We were already here.
Right.
There are too many historical, archaeological provings of our existence being on this side of the water 20, 40,000 years ago, just in terms of the sculptures that are being dug up and found in South America. So when I started thinking about women of color, I'm just thinking about every facet of it. Filipinos, East Indian, Chinese, us, South Americans. And it's like, it's not excluding anybody else.
Right.
But what I'm singing about with women of color is that I can sing about women of color, and we can be that without having to be better than what is not a woman of color.
Exactly.
We don't need to be better than you. We just need to be the best of what we are.
We can be. Right.
And once we understand how much we are what we are and how that best works for us and causes and regenerates the love that we need, then we will love ourselves that much more, and the curses and the downtrodden of us just for the color that we are will have less and less significance. And there were a lot of people, I caught a lot of flack on Pandora for that song. They would play everything off of the Eclectic Bohemian album except that song, and several women were like, why won't you play that? Why won't you? And when I talked to them, they were somewhat ethnic about it, that it just, it doesn't speak to the masses. I said, excuse me. There are more people of color on Earth than there is anything else on Earth.
Right.
And it's stop being so, whatever it is, high and mighty that we can't love ourselves. Well, I mean, I have to say, Mike, for the same reason they didn't play the Retro Blackness album at all. They thought... They thought Loving My People, and they thought Love Like No Other. I mean, how dare you sing about loving your grandmother?
Right.
And I'm like, are you kidding me?
And
my mentality is like, if that's how you feel, take all of my albums off your radio station. I don't need you. I'm not selling records to the people in your office. I'm selling records to people, right now, my second biggest audience in the world is South Africa. In the world. South Africans rival, fan-wise, they rival my fan base here. They're like, we know every album, every song, and to the degree that I was able to put all of my albums out in 19 different countries in Africa through Sony distribution. So it's obviously it's not a joke, but when you sit down and write a song like that, it has its foundation. You're nothing more. You're not the clay. You're the guy that's shaping it. So I got to shape the words and tie, the little syncopated rhythms and whatever. And the hardest part of that song was actually singing it. How can you sing this and make them understand you feel this? This is how you really feel. You're not just putting something out there. Oh man, if I do the great woman song, it'll cliche me to the... No, this is my grandmother's, this is my mother, this is my aunt's, this is my daughter, these are my nieces, my cousins. This is every woman of color that I'm connected to. And then when we start adding friends and people that we love that are outside of our family circles, it's like, it's every woman of color on planet Earth. What woman on Earth that is of color doesn't deserve to have these wonderful things said about her? And I stood that ground, and it's one of those songs that it speaks for itself. I don't have to do, when that little, whatever that thing is I'm doing in the front of it, when that starts, and people know that that's starting, that's when the screaming starts. It's like when Donny Hathaway started singing You Got a Friend on his live album. All they had to hear was those first three chords, and they went ballistic. Wow. And it's like it kind of happens like that for me, and I'm like, man, it's hard to be on stage and not be moved to tears when you're singing that song, because it gives such a connected feeling to women of color and men of color. It's like we're not all about we can't get along and we're all in prison and we're all on welfare and all of that. There's a lot more to our lives than what you people are, being told. And you need to know that. And it's so funny. Never write another song, I wrote that one.
Wow, and it's so funny because when I think of, as you say that, and I think of your body of work, that's what it exemplifies to me, is that music, there's so much out there, but when you think of just all of the great songs that you've written, and I'm listening to one right now which is one of my favorite songs that you've written, and you probably won't even believe it, but Love Stories by Jennifer that you wrote, and Jennifer Holliday recorded that song.
Actually wrote that for a young lady named India Davenport.
India Davenport, I know exactly who that is.
Yeah, she was, I forget the group that she was in, Brand New Heavies.
Brand New Heavies, yeah.
Yeah, and she wanted to do something, and she sang the demo. You know, she did the demo of the song, and I was like, as a friend, I was like, well, come on in and do this, you know. And she was like, and she loved it, and then she got into the Brand New Heavies, and it's like it wasn't something that fit what Delicious Vinyl was wanting to do with her. So I don't even know how that song got to. I think the song got to Jennifer Holliday through Michael Powell, who was Anita's producer.
Yeah,
and Michael produced Jennifer's record as well. I didn't know at that time that Jennifer was from Detroit, but now it makes sense. She is Detroit. You know, that's where all the killer vocalists come from.
That's right. So. Speaking of killer vocalists, I want to give another shout out to Joy Tiffany and her mom. They're listening to you out of Detroit. You have a large following out of Detroit. Charlene Pace in Atlanta, Jacqueline Jones right here in D.C., all listening in on this interview. Tell us a little bit about acoustic therapy before we get out of here. What should we expect from acoustic therapy?
I think you should expect, wow, man, more of the same.
More of the same,
thank you. I can't say, you know, it's like I don't want to change what I do. I think you'll find some different stories. Acoustic therapy for me, and it's an album that's going to be rooted in me getting through, you know, relationships, the ending of relationships, and how music has always been a safe place for me to hide when I've been, you know, dating someone or even married to someone and it's not worked. Everything isn't supposed to work. The only thing that's certain is that you're supposed to grow, and if you find areas to grow, even in your losses, you'll be a successful individual. That is my safe place. Acoustic therapy is acoustic music, and it is what I do with music that becomes therapeutic to me in terms of, you know, how the songs make me feel after something like that happens. And it's basically how I'm getting through my life. Song-wise, I don't even know how I'm going to put a definition on the type of songs they are, Mike, because there are a few of them that are different, and I want to do some things that are different. Acoustically, I want to go into some steel string acoustic guitar, which I haven't done, and maybe a little more acoustic piano, and maybe a little more sparseness to feature my ability to sing. But I can tell you lyrically, you know, melody-wise and chordal-wise, it's going to be what I do. It's not going to be like you're not going to come back and go, why was this guy trying to be Dexter Gordon from the 1930s jazz days? I'm not doing that kind of album. Right. I'm doing Gary Taylor in 2017.
Yes.
Actually, it started in 2008. It started 2008. I started writing for it, and this started recording things and being a songwriter. You know, between 2008 and now, I've written a lot of songs and done a lot of things lyrically with Will Downing. But man, I've put down easily 94 ideas for this album. I could have 4 or 5 albums out of this, but not everything for me is saying acoustic therapy. So I need to just grab the 12 or 14 pieces that fit, plug them in, and got to have this record out next year. I can't go another year without putting a record out because I'm sick of the distance. You know, it's
we're waiting. But here's the thing:
I've had people call up and threaten me. Man, if you don't put this record out right now, you know, I'm like, if I don't put the record out right now, what?
Right, right. We're cocky, right? Chest out. The beauty of it is you've got so much great music out there. Even though we want new music, the music that you have is incredible, and
man,
we love to listen to it.
To have you.
You have no idea.
Your listening audience and I don't like calling them fans. I would rather call them music family. My music family understands me, and they let me be me. They let me goof up, and they let me make mistakes, and they let me not like certain songs of my own that they like, they allow me to do that, and it doesn't affect them at all. They still love it. So it's I'm hoping and I'm trusting that Acoustic Therapy is going to be a monster. It's going to be a monster because I have some songs. I have interludes in it that everybody hears. You know, a couple of friends of mine have heard a few of the interludes, and they're like, man, why don't you make that a song? I said, because it's an interlude. It's just me with a flash of a thought, but I'm going to put that flash of a thought musically, you know, and it's almost like, man, you should just turn that. I've been told already you need to turn a couple of these interludes into songs. I'm like, no, they got to be what they are.
Got to be what
songs
they are.
Will be there. Yeah, but I will say this. I've been gassing myself for the last 11 years because I'm still sitting under my digital recorders listening to the ideas, just the ideas of songs that are going to go on it. And it's like, okay, one day it's this 12, and the next day it's this 12, and then the next day it's this. You know, it's like different songs every day make the combination of what Acoustic Therapy is going to be. But I know that my back is against the wall to get this record finished and out by spring of next year.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're going to change something. We're going to change how these adult contemporary songs are perceived on video. We're going to do that. We're going to do that starting next year because you're going to have a video out.
Great.
You're going to have a video out.
I plan to, you know, shoot videos on the songs on this album as we did with Square One, but it's the concept is if it's nothing more than a video performance, you need to see the words. You need to see the words being formed as they're coming out of my mouth and understand how I feel about them. And I totally agree with you, man, that we deserve this.
Yes.
You know, we deserve it. We're the torch carriers for our, you know, our genre of music, our whatever it is that, and I get it from my 23, get this, I got 23-year-old fans who are like, I've been a fan of yours for the last 20 years. Now, how can you be listening to my music since you were 3?
Mom and Dad was listening
like,
to it,
Mom
right?
And Dad, my mom plays your music every day, still plays it every day.
Right.
And then they show up at my shows.
Yeah.
They'll show up at Catalina's, and we'll go through, you know, when people are saying, you know, you were on stage and off stage too short a period of time. Well, the last time we played the Birchmere, which was in 2015, they said we were on stage for it was just, we were on and off. You know, we're on stage 2.5 hours. But I'm glad the songs are that good and the show is that enjoyable that it makes it feel like, oh my God, I want more, you know. But we're on stage 2.5 hours. It's a long time. It's just that I have the best musicians, people that I love. My boys out of the D.C. area are my boys on the East Coast and my boys out of the L.A. area. And I've been blessed with two incredible, Wayne Lindsey on the West Coast and Vince Evans on the East Coast are the two most amazing musical directors any singer could ever want to be.
And you know, I know who you're talking about when you say Wayne Lindsey from Lindsey and Lindsey. And the husband and wife group from back in the day.
Yeah.
I used to listen to them around the same time I listened to you.
Well, Wayne is my cousin.
No way.
Yeah, Wayne is married to my Wayne is married to my cousin China, and that makes him my cousin. You know, and it's like
exactly.
We get together. We get together on that tip. But you know, that's another thing that's going to happen with Acoustic Therapy is I have some incredible musicians. Who I want on this album also.
Wow.
You know, forget, I want this vocalist and that vocalist, but I want some players on it. You know, I want Doc Powell and I want Wayne Lindsey and I want, you know, this young kid, J-Mo, who plays with Layla. I want these kids on this album because they are real musicians who bring acoustic. What they do on an album, they can do it live.
Yeah.
And that's just going to make the live performance explosive, man.
Yeah, really. That was another great... the album, I think they only put out one album, Lindsey, and it was incredible. Yeah. That album was crazy.
Yeah. They did a song called Power to the People on that, and I sang with Lynn, did background vocals with Lynn on that album. And Wayne made me do a little bit of stepping out, you know, but he's been another one of those entities who were like, man, you got to just keep coming out, you know, and as I'm landing where I'm landing, because I feel like I'm just getting started, Mike, where a lot of people started doing this when they were kids. I started doing it when I was an adult.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I feel like I'm just getting
starting
to the point where this is just starting to be a lot of fun now. You know?
It's about to get really fun. I'm telling you.
Brother, I'm looking forward to it.
Let me tell you, man, we're about to wrap our hour up. We could have gone another hour. This has been one of the best interviews I can say to date, because it's full circle for me, because I am such a huge supporter of your music. It meant a lot to me.
And I really appreciate
so many
it. And what I'm hoping is when I get this record done, I can just fly back there and sit in the studio with you and say, okay, this is Acoustic Therapy. Let's look at it.
Hey, we've got a room. We've got a room where you could perform at. Also, I just want to say because when I used to listen to you, you can't help but sing along to your music. That was the other great thing. Jackie Jones just said she's also a singer. She said he makes me want to sing again, and I think that's the biggest compliment that you can get, because your music does make you want to sing. It's feel good music. It makes you feel good.
Lionel Richie told me something when I was with A&M Records. He said, "You're an incredible writer, but don't be so incredible that the housewife in Nebraska can't sing your song while she's washing dishes."
Yeah, because there's a
because it's like you can love Ella Fitzgerald, but you're not going to be Ella Fitzgerald.
Right.
But when Ella Fitzgerald simplifies her melodies the way Lionel simplified his melodies, and then you draw in millions and millions and millions of people, and anybody that has the gift to vocalize or carry a melody, I would say what Mike Singletary said to his football team: it's a terrible thing to you have been given such a wonderful God-given gift and not use it.
Wow, that's incredible, man. Incredible. Well, I want to say thank you so much for this interview tonight. It was incredible talking to you. You're a great musician, and we're definitely glad to have you here with this interview tonight.
Well, thank you, brother, and thank you to your listeners and the like I said, the music family who's out there supporting what I'm choosing to do. And I can say with some, pretty much assuredness that I don't think Acoustic Therapy is going to be a disappointment at all. It might scare some people.
You don't have an album out there that's disappointing. Now that's for sure.
There's some people that are thinking, like my friend Steve thought, man, how are you going there, and why are you going there, and where are you going? It's like there's just some places I'm exploring musically that really feel good, and I'm gonna put them on a CD and put it out.
That's right, man. Again, I want to give a shout out to Courtney and Danielle Ritchie on their 6th wedding anniversary. She says to her husband, "I love you more today than yesterday," and what a better night to do it on this night that we're honoring you and all of this love.
Well,
music.
You can do me a favor and play special for them.
I sure will. I'll do that.
You know what I mean?
I sure will.
Play special for them.
I sure will. If you would do us just a little tag before you leave, and that is just to say, hello, this is Gary Taylor, and you're listening to Radar Radio, and we are on it.
All right. Hey, this is Gary Taylor, and you're listening to Radar Radio.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much, Gary. We'll definitely be in contact with Danielle about more stuff for you, and thank you so much for this interview tonight. It was very special.
I appreciate you, brother, and you guys have a good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You take care.
You too. Thank you.
Blessings.
All right. Bye-bye.
We'll be right back.
That's amazing. Hey, Lori Carter. Hey, Jackie.
I settle down, I have more than just my peace of mind, knowing you're around. You're special, so very special. You're a special part of my life.
Can't explain the feeling that I get when you touch my hand, 'cause the love that flows from you to me is more than I can stand. And like it's been said so many times before, with every day that passes by, I'm loving you more and more. You're special, so very special. You're a special part of my life.
So very special.
You're a special part of my life.
Even if the time should come where we should be apart, it won't bother me. Baby, you're right here in my heart. Here's hoping that the moment shared will always be enough.
I know it will, as long as there's love. I don't need to know all the answers we're yet to find.
I only wanna live for the love you placed on my mind.
And like it's been said so many times before,
With every day passing by, I'm loving you more and more. You're special, so very special. You're a special part of my life.
so very special, special part of my life.
Yes, you are.
Never had a love so right, gonna love you for the rest of my life. You are
Baby, you are.
so special. I just wanna let you know, I just wanna let you know.